sine and cosine, remember, you don't normally rewrite. So what you want to do for this one is we want to actually factor the numerator here. Okay, so this next part I'm just going to be doing my factoring before I rewrite. So in order for me to factor this numerator, I want to write it in the correct order. So negative 4 cosine squared x minus 3 cosine x plus 1. And then I want to take out the negative before I factor. So it'll become plus 3 cosine x and then minus 1. So we're going to have to do long factoring because we have the 4 out front. So 4 times the negative 1 gives me negative 4. Two numbers that multiply to negative 4 and add to positive 3 for negative 1. So bring down the first term. Middle term will be plus 4 cosine x and minus 1 cosine x. And bring down your last term. So then we're going to do grouping. GCF here is 4 cosine x. That'll leave you with cosine x plus 1. GCF here would be negative 1, and that's cosine x plus 1. So my two factors are cosine x plus 1 and 4 cosine x minus 1. Well, we do still have this negative that we brought out front that we need there. Okay, so this was just the factoring part. Okay, so now to actually go back to our proof here, the numerator, I'm going to write my factored part. And then for the denominator part, it's sine squared. Well, if you notice, everything's in cosine here, so I'm going to change this to being in terms of cosine. So remember, sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1, which means sine squared x is 1 minus cosine squared x. Okay, so then from there, we still are trying to need to get rid of some of these cosines. So remember when you have factoring like x squared minus 9, those are perfect squares, difference of squares. It turns into x plus 3 and x minus 3. Well, these are both perfect squares here, 1 and cosine squared x. So you can factor this denominator as 1 plus cosine x and 1 minus cosine x. Keep the numerator the same for now. So 1 plus cosine x and 1 minus cosine x. So, because we have cosine x plus 1 and 1 plus cosine x, those are the same thing, so that can cancel. So take a look at what we're trying to get. We're trying to get 1 minus 4 cosine x. Well, we have this negative, and we have 4 cosine x minus 1. So if we just distribute this negative out, that'll give us a positive 1, which is what we need, and a minus 4 cosine x. And then in the denominator, we have 1 minus cosine x, which is what we're supposed to have. So we ended up with the right-hand side. Alright, and then the last problem. Okay, so on this one, hopefully you can tell which one you're going to start with. So we're going to start with the right one this time. Couple ways to do this. I'm going to show you the fastest way. These are multiplied, so if you want to multiply them out and simplify, you can. It will work. It will just take you a little bit longer. So what I want you to notice here is this is already secant squared. Well, 1 plus tangent squared, we have that 1, and we have the squared trig function. So remember, you have those Pythagorean identities. Well, we know 1 plus tangent squared is secant squared x. So I can rewrite this part as secant squared x. This is just secant squared x. Well, if you have secant squared times secant squared, that would be secant to the 4th x, which is what the left-hand side wanted us to get. And that's all you had to do. So short ways to do it. When you're doing these by yourself, sometimes you might do the longer way. It's perfectly fine as long as you can show all the steps and get to the right answer.